It's easy to be reductive about Dragon Quest XI. In the broadest terms, it's a menu-based JRPG that features the story of a chosen one going up against an ancient evil. If you don't know or care about Dragon Quest, that might sound a little dull, yet the phrase, "it's not what you do, it's how you do it," couldn't ring more true here. How the game crafts its world, draws you into it, and then finds ways of making you care are all done expertly. Dragon Quest XI is an impressive journey, and when you do end up finally putting it down, you can't help but miss it. The most essential part of the game's appeal is how consistently pleasant its world is to be a part of. Akira Toriyama's well-known style has been a core part of the series since its inception, and this is easily one of the best implementations yet. Just looking at key characters gives you a sense of warmth and an impression of their personalities, including the pride of the hero's mom and the world won't beat me down spirit of your companion Sylvando. Enemies are equally endearing, if not more so. They wriggle and writhe in such adorable fashion, you can't help but love them. Yet the environments are the true showpiece here. The quaint yet comfortable starting village, Cobblestone, is contrasted by someplace like Heliodor with its towering castle and archways. An equal amount of praise is warranted for the areas connecting these points of interest. There are calm beaches, dense forests, vast plains, and many more locales to get swept up in. The variety isn't as present in the dungeons, which can feel more visually monotone, but even these are saved by mechanics that make them just a bit more interesting, such as unexpected collapsing floors.
Seriously?
As appreciated as the aesthetic differences are, what actually attaches you to these places is how effectively the game encourages interaction with the world. So many locations have an abundance of things to find, be it materials for crafting, money hidden in treasure chests, or mini-medals for your ever-increasing collection. All of these things have an associated reward. Collected materials can be used in the forge for new equipment, and prizes are rewarded for amassing mini-medals. The game conditions you to scour its most remote sections because more often than not, there's something waiting to be uncovered. Much of the time, you can't simply walk to the items either. You'll need to slay a particular glittering monster and then mount it. You may hop into a large suit of armor that lets you barrel through a previously inaccessible area, or ride a flying beast that lets you reach high ledges. Side quests also demand darting off to the most out-of-the-way spots in the game, making you feel like a seasoned explorer if you choose to engage with them. For as much as there is to find, what makes the treasure hunting so tantalizing is the restraint shown in the design. There's plenty of reasons to break off the beaten path, but at the same time, the game doesn't go too far the other way, becoming a junkyard of collectibles where you can't take 2 steps without bumping into an item to pick up. It creates an addictive flow as you hop from one place to the next, finding enough to be satisfied with, but not so much that you're overwhelmed. The flow is further aided by a number of convenient features that aren't especially remarkable on their own, but add up to create a smooth journey overall. You can fast travel from almost anywhere to almost anywhere else, as long as you've previously been there. Plentiful campsites throughout the world allow you to rest for free, forge new gear, stock up on items, manually save, and reset allotted skill points. These campsites are usually accompanied by a bell that calls in a trusty steed, letting you gallop through the world and avoid encounters with enemies. Party members can be set to act automatically during battle, so you roll through fights just a bit faster if desired. For as sprawling as Dragon Quest XI is, it feels conscious of the player's time, cleaving off some of the fat that can plague the genre.
Sure thing, we're gonna win this easy, and then all the girls are gonna be swooning over me. You'll see.
That's not to say there isn't any fat at all, much of which can be found in the story. The premise is as straightforward as they come. You, the hero, are a chosen one and must drive back the darkness. For quite a bit of the game, though, that journey is in the background as you focus instead on the individual tales of the places you visit. Depending on the tale, this works both for and against the game. Some of the stories are surprisingly impactful, dealing with topics in more complex ways than you initially expect. A key example involves lost love and how rumor, as well as fear, can mask the truth. But others are too basic, amounting to little more than an evil menace causing a ruckus. If there are going to be a bunch of miniature narratives, you don't want every single one to try and emotionally punch you in the gut, but there does need to be some sort of creative hook. Surprisingly, the core narrative does come around in a big way, adding unexpected variables. The same is true of your companions, all of which start out incredibly simple, but eventually get fleshed out, providing much-needed depth and effectively investing the player in their various motivations. There's more good than bad in the Dragon Quest XI story, and it's worth the time you put in.
Father, my training is complete.
Then give me the pledge.
A knight's word is his bond, his kingdom his master. He serves the weak untiringly, challenges the strong, unflinchingly, and never retreats in the face of adversity.
Understanding how fights work is simple. They consist of turn-based battles where you select abilities, spells, and items from a menu. The biggest twist comes in the form of pep powers. As you slug it out with enemies, there's a chance any one of your characters will get pepped up, entering a charged state where specific stats get enhanced. After being pepped up, you can cash in, losing the buffs but performing a super ability. The pepped up powers are often accompanied by incredibly playful animations, and so many are so ridiculous that it's exciting to chase after new powers just to see how they'll play out. Pep powers also play into character progression. As you level up, you earn skill points that can be spent on a board for each character. Unlocking one skill opens up adjacent skills, and depending on the direction you travel on the board, you'll specialize in one thing over another. Certain skills unlock new pep powers, which can definitely influence how you work through the grid. Along with skills and pep powers, there's the fun-sized forge, which is a charming and clever crafting mechanic. Usable at any camp, players can take materials found in the world or from monsters and use them to make new equipment dictated by recipes. Getting your hands on a new recipe is great for a number of reasons. The items are typically better than what you could buy at a store, and shopping can be quite expensive depending on how thoroughly you equip everyone. Beyond the obvious practicalities, though, the fun-sized forge is its own little blast of a game. Every piece of gear is broken down into small squares. You have to hammer away at these squares, trying to get an increasing meter to a certain point. The closer you get, the better the quality of the item will be. Over time, you earn forging skills to help with this, such as strikes that hit for double the normal amount. Forging never takes all that long, but the light puzzle element makes it a minor event. As gear increasingly gets better, so too does the challenge of the forge. It's also wonderful that when the forge levels up, it plays an adorable version of the classic Dragon Quest jingle. The problem with all of this character progression is that, by default, Dragon Quest XI is notably easy. As long as you're doing very obvious things, such as regularly upgrading equipment and not avoiding every fight, you'll breeze through the vast majority of it. There are a couple of fights at the very end of the game that do push back, and it's disappointing that this sort of challenge couldn't have been applied more regularly. Although fights aren't a struggle, bosses still tend to be engaging because the game has enough tricks up its sleeve and spaces them out at appropriate intervals. These tricks aren't especially wild, mostly consisting of different ways the enemy can incapacitate you, but there's usually something to add a bit of spice to a fight. So while the lack of difficulty is an issue, it doesn't necessarily translate to boredom or disinterest.
That will teach you to be so grumpy. Now, hold nice and still while I tie you up.
Anyone seeking a greater challenge may use special modifiers that can be turned on when making a new save file, but this is an imperfect solution. The modifiers do seem to ramp things up by a lot. Things like no shopping, stronger enemies, or the inability to equip armor will undoubtedly change the way you play the game, but the inflexibility of these options is frustrating. If you decide they're too much, it's easy to turn them off at a church, but once they're off, you can't turn them back on unless you create a new save file and start the adventure over. It's a good idea with a bizarre implementation. However, having played through the game with all the modifiers turned off, we walked away still content with the adventure. Speaking of bizarre implementations, the quality of the MIDI soundtrack is occasionally frustrating. Specifically during the busier tracks with a lot of bombastic instrumentation, there's a lingering sense that things don't sound as good as they could. Yet there are a far greater number of times where the composition of the music really sells a particular moment, especially the quieter tracks that accompany some of the game's biggest and best parts. These moments not only overcome the music's shortcomings overall, but stick with you, becoming impossible to separate from the scene itself. Even on their own, these tracks can be described as effectively stirring pieces of music.
It feels as though the whole town is bobbing up and down on the waves.
So this is Gondolia, huh? I heard there were some big scores to be had here.
There's a lot to pick at with Dragon Quest XI, be it the sometimes inconsistent storytelling, the lack of difficulty, or the MIDI quality, but these complaints feel oddly muted when playing because of how much the game fundamentally gets right. The craftsmanship of the world, lovable characters, and wide-ranging exploration add up in a truly fulfilling way. If you want an RPG to make you feel like you're conquering a sprawling adventure, Dragon Quest XI does that handily.
Wait!
Easy Allies reviews are made possible by generous viewers just like you. If you like what you see, check out patreon.com/easyallies to help us make more. For just $1 a month, you can gain access to weekly updates, spoiler discussions, and exclusive shows.
It'll keep you safe. I heard there are lots of monsters where you're going. Be sure to keep it close, won't you? I don't know what's in store for you out there, but wherever you go and whoever you meet, don't forget us, will you? Take care, and remember, we'll be waiting for you.